Dark Water. Episode 3, Whispers in the Night, by Carl Otto. The sun danced upon the cobblestone streets of Saltmarsh, casting a warm glow over the town's bustling market square. Children's laughter echoed through the air as they chased each other around the central fountain, their bare feet splashing in the cool water. Merchants' voices rose above the sound of the crowd, enticing passers-by with the scent of exotic spices and the glimmer of handcrafted jewelry. In the wealthier districts, grand manor houses stood proudly, their meticulously groomed gardens bursting with vibrant flowers and well-trimmed hedges. The gentle clink of porcelain teacups and the soft murmur of conversation drifted from the terraces, where the town's elite gathered to exchange pleasantries and indulge in the latest gossip. The aroma of freshly baked bread wafted from the nearby bakery, mingling with the salty tang of the ocean breeze, creating an inviting atmosphere that seemed to promise comfort and prosperity. However, as the sun began to set, the once welcoming streets took on a more ominous character. Shadows crept along the walls, their elongated fingers reaching out to envelop the narrow alleyways. The laughter and chatter of the day faded, replaced by an eerie stillness that settled over the harbor like a heavy cloak. The occasional creak of a ship's hull and the distant cry of a gull pierced the silence, their sounds amplified by the growing darkness. In the dimly lit taverns near the docks, whispered conversations hung in the air like wisps of smoke. Sailors huddled over their mugs, their eyes darting nervously as they recounted tales of strange occurrences and shadowy figures that lurked in the night. The flickering candlelight cast distorted shadows on the walls, creating an atmosphere of unease that seemed to seep into the very fabric of the town. It was amidst this shifting landscape of light and darkness that two intertwined stories began to take shape. In a modest home near the harbor, Emily and Lily, a mother and daughter, grappled with the loss of their husband and father, Simon, the navigator of the merchant ship, the Seafarer, that was lost at sea almost a year ago, and an unsettling presence that seemed to follow them as a constant reminder of the loved one they had lost. And in the shadows of the night, a figure known only as Dark Water moved with purpose, his cloak rippling like the waves of the sea as he sought to protect the innocent from the corruption that festered in Saltmarsh's underbelly. As the moon cast its ethereal glow upon the waves, the fates of these two tales became inexorably linked, their paths destined to cross in a dance of love, loyalty, and the unyielding strength of the human spirit against the encroaching darkness that threatened to consume them all. The scent of baked bread lingered in the air as Emily and Lily moved through their evening routine, the warmth of the oven a stark contrast to the chill that seemed to seep into their modest home. Emily's deft fingers wove the final strands of Lily's braid, the repetitive motion a small comfort against the unease that prickled at the back of her neck. Lily's wide hazel eyes met her mother's gaze in the flickering candlelight. "Mama, do you hear that?" she whispered, her small hand gripping Emily's arm. The creaking of the old wooden floors echoed through the room, like footsteps of an unseen visitor. Emily forced a smile, her lips trembling slightly as she tucked a stray curl behind Lily's ear. "It's just the house, my love. The old girl is settling in for the night." But even as the words left her mouth, a shiver ran down her spine, the hairs on her arms standing on end. In the silence that followed, Emily's mind wandered to the strange occurrences that had become increasingly frequent in their home. The rocking chair in the corner swayed gently, untouched by any breeze. The faded curtains billowed inward as if pushed by an invisible hand, and always the feeling of eyes watching from the shadows, an unseen presence that lingered just beyond the flickering light of the candle. Lily's voice broke through Emily's thoughts, her tone filled with a mix of excitement and trepidation. "Mama, I think it's him, the Dark Protector." Her small fingers traced the worn fabric of her quilt, her eyes distant as she recounted the stories she had whispered to her dolls. "He walks the streets at night, a cloak of shadows around him. He keeps the bad things away, Mama. He keeps us safe." Emily's heart clenched at the earnestness in Lily's words. She had dismissed the tales as mere flights of fancy, the product of a child's imagination. But as the weight of the strange occurrences pressed down upon her, she couldn't help but wonder if there was a kernel of truth hidden within Lily's stories. As Emily tucked the quilt around Lily's small frame, her daughter's eyes sparkled with a knowing look. "He's real, isn't he, Mama? The Dark Protector?" Emily's hand lingered on Lily's cheek, her touch a gentle reassurance. I don't know, sweetheart, but if he is out there, I'm sure he's watching over us. Now, it's time for sleep. The angels will keep you safe tonight. Lily's eyelids fluttered closed, a contented smile on her lips, as she drifted off into dreams of a cloaked figure standing guard against the darkness. Emily watched her for a moment, the steady rise and fall of her daughter's chest, a small comfort in the unease that filled the room. As Emily made her way to her own bed, the floorboards creaking beneath her bare feet, she couldn't shake the feeling that their lives were on the cusp of change. The shadows seemed to lengthen, reaching out to her with tendrils of uncertainty. And somewhere, in the depths of the night, she could almost feel the presence of the Dark Protector, a mysterious figure that had become inexorably linked to their fate. As the night deepened, a figure emerged from the shadows that clung to the narrow alleyways of Saltmarsh. Dark Water, a name whispered in fear and awe by those who caught glimpses of his presence, moved with a purpose that was both terrifying and captivating. His cloak, seemingly woven from the very fabric of darkness, rippled like the surface of a turbulent sea as he navigated the labyrinthine streets. The soft thud of his boots against the cobblestones echoed through the empty alleys, a steady rhythm that seemed to merge with the distant crash of waves against the shore. Dark Water's senses were heightened, attuned to the slightest movement or sound that might hint at danger lurking in the shadows. As he paused beneath the eaves of a dilapidated warehouse, the voice of Dravar, his constant companion and tormentor, slithered through his mind like a serpent. "The child senses your presence, Simon," Dravar whispered, his words dripping with malice. "She believes in you, the Dark Protector. How delightful." Darkwater gritted his teeth, his jaw clenching as he fought against the insidious influence of the entity that had granted him his powers. "Silence," he growled, his voice low and menacing. "I am no puppet for your amusement, Dravar." The demon's laughter echoed through the recesses of Darkwater's mind, a sound that chilled him to the bone. "Oh, but you are, Simon. You are my vessel, my instrument of chaos. Embrace the darkness that courses through your veins. Let it consume you." Darkwater shook his head, his eyes flashing with a defiant light. "I will not succumb to your will, demon. My purpose is to protect the innocent, not to sow destruction." Dravar's presence seemed to coil tighter around Darkwater's thoughts, his influence a tangible force that threatened to suffocate him. "You cannot deny our hunger forever, Simon. The hunger within you grows with each passing day. If we don't feed soon, I will make you." Darkwater's hands clenched into fists, his nails digging into his palms as he struggled to maintain control. He drew in a deep breath, focusing on the image of Emily and Lily, the two bright lights in the darkness that consumed his world. "I will never surrender to you, Dravar. I will fight your influence until my last breath." With a final defiant surge of willpower, Darkwater pushed Dravar's presence to the back of his mind, the demon's laughter fading into a distant echo. He straightened his shoulders, his resolve hardened by the knowledge that he had a purpose greater than himself. As he stepped out from beneath the eaves, Darkwater's eyes scanned the shadows, searching for any sign of the corruption that he knew lurked within Saltmarsh. He had a duty to fulfill, a promise to keep to those who could not defend themselves, and he would not rest until the innocent were safe from the darkness that threatened to engulf them all. Dravar's dark voice whispered, "Ah, yes, let's hunt." Across town in the Crow's Nest Tavern, the air hung thick with the stench of cheap ale and stale sweat. In a shadowed corner, a group of men huddled around a table, their voices low and urgent. "Mark my words, this Darkwater is a menace to our trade," growled a wiry man with a scar across his cheek. He slammed his fist on the table, making the tankards jump. "3 of my best men, struck down in one night. And for what? Some paltry smuggling venture?" "'Tis not just the petty smugglers," said another, his eyes darting nervously about the room. "I heard he hit the Blackwater Cove last week, intercepted a shipment of stolen goods, left the place littered with bodies. That's the 3rd smuggling operation this month." A murmur of unease rippled through the group. The Blackwater Cove was a notorious smuggling ring, known for its ruthless tactics and high-value contraband. For Darkwater to strike at it so openly was a bold move. "I heard he even took on Captain Blackwell himself," whispered the nervous man, referring to the infamous leader of the Blackwater Cove, known for his cunning and brutality. left him bound and gagged for the town guard, they say. The men exchanged wary glances, the gravity of the situation sinking in. If Darkwater could take on the likes of Captain Blackwell and his crew, what chance did they have? "This ain't just about some vigilante playing hero," growled the scarred man. "This is about our very survival. If he keeps disrupting our operations like this, we'll be ruined." The others nodded in grim agreement, their faces shadowed with worry and anger. It was clear that something had to be done about Darkwater, and soon, before he brought the entire criminal underworld of Saltmarsh crashing down around them. "What of Wells?" asked a burly man with a thick beard. "His men weren't merely killed, they were. The scarred man scoffed. "Wells is a fool. He underestimated this Darkwater, and now he's confined to Bedlam, raving about unnatural shadows." The men shifted uneasily, their eyes flickering to the dark corners of the room, as if expecting Darkwater to materialize from the very shadows. "Perhaps 'tis time we place a bounty on his head," suggested the bearded man. "Send a message, let him know he's not welcome here." "And who's to collect on that?" sneered the scarred man. "You? Last I heard, you couldn't even handle a pair of dock rats who tried to cheat you at dice." The bearded man's face reddened, his hand inching toward the knife at his belt, but before he could retort, a figure emerged from the shadows behind him. "Gentlemen," said the newcomer, his voice low and menacing, "I believe we have more pressing matters to discuss than petty quarrels." The men fell silent, their eyes widening in recognition. The newcomer was dressed in the uniform of the town guard, but there was nothing official about his demeanor. He carried himself with the easy confidence of a man who knew his own power. "Sergeant," whispered the nervous man, his voice trembling slightly, "we didn't expect to see you here." The guard sergeant smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "And I didn't expect to hear that my men were being picked off by some vigilante in a cloak. Yet here we are." He pulled out a chair and sat down, his movements precise and deliberate. The other men shifted uneasily, suddenly aware of the power dynamic in the room. "This Darkwater is becoming a problem," the sergeant continued, his fingers drumming on the table. "Not just for your enterprises, but for the entirety of Saltmarsh. The people whisper, asking questions. And that, gentleman, is a threat to our trade." "We've attempted to address him," protested the scarred man, "but he's like a specter. Appears from the ether, then melts into the shadows." The guard sergeant leaned forward, his eyes glinting in the candlelight. "Then, perhaps, 'tis time we cast light upon those shadows. Wells and his men were careless, overly assured. But I have other means at my disposal." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small vial, filled with an iridescent liquid. The men leaned forward, their eyes widening with recognition and greed. "Is that what I think it is?" breathed the bearded man. The guard sergeant nodded, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Dreamlily, the latest shipment straight from our supplier, a mere taste of this, and even the most troublesome citizens become as docile as lambs." He set the vial on the table, letting the men's gazes linger on it. "Imagine what we could achieve with a city full of addicts, dependent on us for their next fix. Darkwater would be the least of our concerns." The men exchanged glances, their minds racing with the possibilities, but the nervous man spoke up, his voice quavering slightly. "But what if Darkwater discovers the Dreamlily? What if he comes after us?" The guard sergeant chuckled, a sound devoid of humor. "Oh, he'll find out eventually, but by then it'll be too late. We'll have the entirety of Saltmarsh in our grasp, and Darkwater will be just another shadow in the night." He stood up, pocketing the vial of Dreamlily. "Keep your ears to the ground, gentlemen, and if you hear anything about Darkwater, you come straight to me. 'Tis time we put an end to this vigilante problem, once and for all." As the guard sergeant melted back into the shadows, the men at the table exchanged uneasy glances. They had always known that their business involved risks, but this felt different. With Darkwater on one side, and the guard in league with powerful suppliers on the other, they were caught in the middle of a war they hadn't signed up for. But as they downed the last of their drinks and slipped out into the night, each man knew one thing for certain. In Saltmarsh, you were either predator or prey. And with Dreamlily flowing through the streets and shadows stalking the alleys, the lines between the two were getting blurrier every day. As dawn broke over Saltmarsh, the marketplace came to life, filled with the chatter of merchants and the aroma of fresh goods. Amidst the bustle, whispers of dark water's presence spread like wildfire, each tale more elaborate than the last. "I heard he can command the very shadows," a fishmonger whispered to wide-eyed customers. "They say he can make a man disappear without a trace." "My neighbor swears she saw him last night," a woman added, her voice trembling. She said his eyes were like bottomless pits, devoid of warmth or humanity. The story spread from stall to stall, each voice adding another layer to the legend of dark water. Children huddled together, their minds filled with a mix of fear and fascination, while adults grappled with a growing sense of unease. Beneath the wild tales, a current of genuine fear rippled through the town. Dark water represented something new, something that defied explanation and challenged their understanding of the world. As the day wore on, the marketplace's atmosphere shifted. Laughter gave way to tense silence, and once vibrant stalls seemed to lose their luster. With the gathering darkness, people retreated to their homes, bolting doors and shuttering windows against the unknown terrors that lurked outside. Little did they know that the true nature of dark water was far more complex than their wildest speculations, and that the fate of their town would soon be intertwined with the mysterious figure who moved unseen through the shadows.